Alright, I'm going to do a quick tutorial on how to take one of your own images and turn them into kind of an old-timey pinhole or old vintage kind of photograph. It's a pretty cool technique. It does require, knowledge of a few of our tools that we have either used in the past, or they might be new to you depending on what level you're starting this at. Two things you're going to need. You're going to need um, two images of one of an object or a thing, an image that you want to turn into that kind of old style photograph. And you're going to need to search an image online. What I would do is search something like concrete texture and see what you can come up with. Ones that are really, really smooth don't usually work out too well just because there's not enough grit or not enough cracks or different tones in it to make a difference in your photo. Something like this works out pretty good. What we're going to end up doing later is combining this with your photo to kind of help give it that kind of texture of an old photograph. So we're going to start off with this right here, and first thing I would do is duplicate your layer, and you can just Control J on your keyboard, or you can right click and duplicate it this way. But you have two layers now of the same image, and what we're going to do to this top image, assuming that your original is nice and sharp and clear, what we're going to do to this is try to give it the effect of the blur that an old photo sometimes has, or a pinhole picture sometimes has, like around the edges of the image. So what I'm going to do, I have that blah blah blah. I have my top layer selected here. I'm going to go up to Filter, and I'm going to go to Blur. I'm going to choose, there's lots of options here. I'm going to choose Gaussian Blur, and there it gives me like a really crazy preview. I'm going to knock this down quite a bit. It really only needs to be, depending on the quality photo that you have, you might start maybe somewhere between 4 and 5 pixels to blur. What I'm going to do, my image is pretty sharp, so I'm going to blur it quite a bit, something like that, maybe about 20. Actually 15 probably be just about right. So I put 15 in there, and then I'm going to click OK. It's going to make sure that blur is applied to this image. Perfect. Now I'm going to add a mask to this layer. So your layer mask is right down here. I'm going to click on this. It says Add Layer Mask. There it is. And what I'm going to do is mask through this layer to show a little bit of this underneath. So I'm going to reveal some of that sharper image from here up on top. So I have my layer mask selected here. I'm going to use the gradient tool for this. I'm going to keep it as a simple black to white gradient. I'm going to choose this option right here, radial gradient. Make sure that my opacity is at 100%. And I'm going to start on my subject. If your subject is right in the middle, then start right in the middle of your image. I'm going to start on her, and I'm going to click, and I'm going to drag this outwards. And let go. And now I can see that I've created a nice, clear, I've masked through. If you look over here, you see what I've done. This area is where I've made it sharp. And as it fades out, it goes back to the blur again. So it creates a nice sharp central focus right there on my main subject, and fades out to that blur that I created on that image. So that's pretty good. I'm happy with the way that ended up. If you don't like it, you can recenter it, and you can do maybe less of a line and make it less focused. Something like that. Maybe it's just on part of her face. Or you can make it really focused and sharp and stretch it further away, and now a larger portion of my image is nice and clear. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to now I'm going to turn this image black and white. So I'm going to click on my adjustment layer up here, yours probably shows up directly above your layers panel. This one that says black and white. Click on that, turns my image black and white. But it treats it like it's still color. So I can take the reds of my image and I can adjust that to make it look like it's, add more contrast or less contrast depending on what you need for your image. And you can go through and adjust these. I kind of like doing this because it gives you a lot of control over the different objects in your image. There's a lot of blue in that sky, and that's going to have a huge effect. I don't want it to be too washed out. I want to have some detail in those clouds. Same thing with these blues. Also don't want her to blend in with it. Magenta is probably just her shirt. I can totally give her a black shirt if I wanted to. Or make it completely white. Depends on how much you want to edit it. So I've kind of made some basic changes right here. I'm okay with that. I'm going to close that down. All I did, you can just click on this and open and close your properties for whichever adjustment layer that you have open. I'm pretty happy with that. So what I'm going to do now is bring this photo over. Clicked on my other image. If you don't have one, now would be a good time to pause and go find one, save it, and open it up in Photoshop. I'm going to select everything in this image, so I'm going to press, on your computers most likely going to be Control A. That selects everything. Got the ants marching around my image here. Now I'm going to copy this. I'm going to Control C. Nothing happened, but I'm going to assume that it copied it. I'm going to click back on my image, and I'm going to Control V, as in Victor, and it says, well, that image isn't the same, so I'm going to say OK, and it's going to let me put it on there anyways. But look at that, it's really tiny, so I need to adjust the size. How do I do that? You need to choose your Move tool. You need to make sure that your Show Transform Controls button is selected. See what happens when I don't. I have nothing to grab onto and change that image. Click it. Now I have something I can work with. I'm going to adjust the size here. I'm going to make it fit right on my image. And there we go. Looks pretty good. Looks pretty crappy right now. I need to hit enter, and my image cleared up quite a bit. Plus, it won't let you do anything else until you hit enter and set that image where you want it. So now that I have it there, I'm going to start talking about some of these blending modes. We need to blend this image into our background. So what I'm going to do is select over here where it says normal. I have a drop down menu. Lots of options for how to blend this image with my background. Some of the more, some of the best ways to do this is either overlay or soft light. I click soft light. Now I can see how it's blended it together now. I can arrow through. You can use your arrows on your keyboard. This Mac won't let me do that. And I can, okay, there's overlay. I can look at all these different ones. Your image might be blending differently than mine. You might have some other cool blending modes that you could choose. The idea is to give your image a little bit of that effect where it looks like it's there in the background. Get some of those textures, some of that grittiness that you can sometimes see in old photos. Sometimes it's like little chemical spots from developing. So I've got this on there. There's a lot of cracks on this paper, so what I'm going to do is change the opacity of this layer. I'm going to drop it down. I don't mind those cracks so much, but what I'm going to do is lower it a little bit so I don't have it as strong on my main subject. If there are some things on your main subject that are showing up, like these cracks, I don't really like that. I can add another mask to that texture layer. I can use my brush, and I can brush away and mask through that texture layer and show the details of the underneath layer. Masks are awesome. You're going to learn that. You do quite a bit of things with them, so a lot. projects will be including these masks. So I've cleaned her up a little bit. If I wanted to, I could lower the opacity of this and fade just certain cracks out that I think are too strong. Really easy thing to do. So, kind of gone through and masked out some spots here and there. I'm okay with that. What I want to do now, I want to add that vintage kind of tone, that color tone to my image here. So I'm going to apply a photo filter, and that's a different adjustment layer right here. And there it is. The default is a warming filter, which is pretty normal for this type of image. I would not go super strong with it or really weak. Why would you put the filter on there if you're just going to knock it all the way down? I want a little bit of that tone, and click on that. You can see what it looks like. Okay, before and after. Turn off and on that layer. If it's too much, crank it down. Turn it off and on. See if you like it. I'm okay with that, so I'm going to close that down. Now, pretty happy with the way this looks. This is the time to change any of these settings here. The sharpness, any of your black and white settings here that show up. You can adjust those if you want to. You can adjust any of these masks if you want to. You can adjust this photo filter now. So you're finished. You are absolutely sure that you love the way that this looks. What I'm going to do is right click over here on the side of one of my layers. Come over here on the side here. Right click on that, and I'm going to flatten this image. Turn it all into one layer. See what happens here. Flattening. Now it's all one layer. I cannot go back. The only way I can go back now is if I go back in my history. And even then you're limited to how many ways to go back. So I've got it all down to one image now, which is perfect. So I'm going to apply one more effect to this, and that's going to be to add kind of a vignette around the border of this picture. I'm going to go up to filter. I'm going to go to lens correction. It's going to open up your picture here. Perfect. I'm going to go over here off to the side. Auto correction, I'm not going to deal with that. I'm going to click on custom. About halfway down you get to this section called vignette. Basically what that means is it's like a faded border around the edges of your picture. Old photos tend to have that kind of quality about them. Your pinhole photos definitely have that quality about them. I'm going to do is take this amount, and I'm going to move it to the left. See how it darkens those borders. Move it to the right. See how it kind of brightens those borders, kind of fades it out. Either one of these are good options. I'm going to go with the darker side this time. So I'm going to move it over this way. And then your midpoint. You can make that midpoint, basically is what it's doing is fading it out. So I'm making it lighter, or I can fade it in. See how it's changing it. It's making it a little bit darker now. Either way is fine. The main idea of this is not to draw too much attention away from your main subject while getting that kind of old-timey quality to your picture. So I'm happy with the way this looks now. All the focus is right there on her. She's sharp, she's focused. She doesn't have all the cracks on her. It's blurred around the edges. I've got the dark borders all working for me. This is turned into a pretty good composition. So I'm going to click OK on this. And applies that to my image. Alright, so we're basically done now. So we've taken something that went from original, bright, colorful, sunny day picture and turned it into something that looks kind of old-timey. You got that crackled look to it, faded borders, type of an old-timey image. So I'm going to save this. You save this as a JPEG. Find out where you're going to save it. I'm just going to save mine to my desktop here. Click that. Change my format to JPEG. I'm going to change this to Audrey pinhole effect. And done. Post that to your site, and that will, actually you'll click OK here first, and then you'll post it to your site.